In this video, we're going to look at an entire domain from the TTESS rubric, and that is the learning environment. This is a quarter of your observation score is this learning environment. However, without some of the components from this learning environment, without it being in your classroom, then it's going to make it very difficult to accomplish some of the other areas that you need to with meeting your objective in class. This is also, most importantly, that area of classroom management. As we all know, if you don't have the classroom management and the students following directions and engaged, then the learning becomes difficult. So in the rubric, we have three dimensions that are in the learning environment. We have our classroom environment, managing student behavior, and classroom culture. So now let's kind of dig into each one and look at some examples for each of these dimensions. So with your classroom environment, routines and procedures. So from the rubric, we have that routines, procedures, or transitions are clear and efficient. So this might be transitioning from like whole group to your small group. This could be moving from the instructions at the beginning of the lesson to a gallery walk where they're around the room. So it's just making sure that whatever you have for your procedures, whether it's procedures for when they enter class, procedures for putting things away at the end of class, just make sure that they're very clear and efficient. And the better that the kids understand these routines and they can do the procedures, do the routines effortlessly, the better that the class will run. Also in this one, you have students actively participating in groups, managing supplies, equipment with very limited teacher direction. As you go up in the descriptors from proficient to accomplished to distinguished, this very limited teacher direction becomes less and less to the point where the kids just take care of it on their own. So one of the things to really think about with this one, with actively participating, is if they're working in groups, for example, is having some group roles and responsibilities. In the TTESS tips folder in Google Drive, there is a file that has a whole page of different group roles and responsibilities that you can assign kids, and they get very creative. So that would be one way to really help with getting kids to participate in groups and manage their supplies and their equipment when they're working. Also, that sounds kind of common sense, but you'd be surprised how many have trouble with this indicator. The classroom is safe and organized to support learning objectives and accessible to most students. This is the proficient level. Now, let's say you go down to developing, then you see this part about the classroom being cluttered. So you have this, so let's say your classroom is well organized, kids can find their materials, they can find supplies, they can get to what they need to get to that leads to mastering your objective. But let's say your classroom is really cluttered and there's papers and books everywhere and trash on the floor. That might not be as conducive of a learning environment to meeting the objective. Plus, if it's cluttered, kids may not be able to find things, they may not be able to get to the supplies, they may not get to the other side of the room where their station is. So this is actually something that can really affect the student's learning, is even the organization of your classroom. Now, the mother lode of the three dimensions in this domain is managing student behavior. This is the foundation. If the student behavior is managed, then you have the foundation to be able to teach. So at the proficient level, you have consistently implements the campus or classroom behavior system. So some suggestions for this, some of you have your own rules. This could be if you do champs, for example, it could be your own little kitschy phrase that you have. This could also be has to do with your social contract. If you do capturing kids' hearts, that would go in this. This is making sure that you actually, you address behaviors, you make sure that there is something in place to help the kids monitor their behavior. Champs gives you those specific roles for different areas. So if we're doing group work, if we're doing SSR, if we're doing whole class instruction, what's my conversation? How do I ask for help? What does the activity look like? What should movement look like? What does participation look like? And then, of course, S, do it all with a smile. Also, the other thing that your observer will be looking for is that students meet the expected classroom behavior expectations. The other part of this, and this is not a bad thing, is if you address behavior swiftly. If you address the behavior swiftly, it stops, you continue on with the lesson, then that's another positive component of managing student behavior. Classroom culture. So the indicator for classroom culture, the dimension, that you're engaging all students in meaningful, relevant learning, and these are both at the proficient level, and that students work respectfully, individually, and in groups. This is where you're going to see kids treating each other properly. You're going to see kids treating each other with respect and being able to work together. Also, with engaging all students in relevant, meaningful learning, you can be engaged and not be on the objective. You can be engaged in learning that has nothing to do with connecting to real life or it doesn't have any meaning to them. That's where you come in and you try to bring that meaning to whatever the topic is that you are covering. So, this is really an area that if you do capturing kids' hearts, if you do capturing kids' hearts, that's really going to help you meet this classroom culture dimension because you are teaching the kids with the social contract, you're teaching them respect, you're using good things to get them started. You use that Excel model and get them to explore in the new learning, communicate with each other. You have that launch at the end that all really helps with the classroom culture. So that would be one that would really help you with this dimension is using that system. So as you're looking at your classroom management, at your learning environment, some things to consider and think about as you're planning your lessons and during your lesson. How do you ensure engagement and how do you ensure authentic engagement? Not just that everybody's writing on a piece of paper. Are they all writing the right things on that piece of paper? What is your classroom behavior system? Do you even have a system? Do you have that set of rules, 3 to 5 rules that the kids must follow, and then you follow through with the consequences if they don't follow the rule? Do you have a consequence ladder? Do you have a consequence ladder where first offense is a warning, second offense may be a parent phone call home, so on and so forth? Do you have something like that that is set in place? And then think about your current students. Do most of them meet your behavior standards? And then what do you do when they don't? How do you handle it? And then, of course, how do you promote respect in the classroom? And for some of us, we don't have to worry about this, but for others, we got to teach a little bit of social skills along with our content. So that, and I know that sounds like something that shouldn't always be a requirement if you're teaching, say, math or language arts. But if the kids don't know how to communicate the skills and how to work with each other with respect, then they may not be able to get towards that objective that they're trying to master if disrespect or misbehavior gets in the way. One final reference I wanted to give is this website, and if you've never heard of this website, it is fantastic, www.pbisworld.com. This is a fantastic behavior website where it even starts with what is the target behavior? What's the issue that you're dealing with? Is it disrespect? Is it anxiety? Is it refusal to comply? What is the main behavior of that student? You click on it, you look and see what are some different interventions I can try to work with that type of behavior. It also has handouts, data tracking tools. If you're tracking a student's behavior, it really is a wealth of knowledge on this pbisworld.com website. So I just highly recommend that that becomes part of your bookmarks in your toolbar on your web browser. It's a good one. I know this was a big overview for learning environment. It's a really big topic that we could go on for hours, but I just wanted to give some really quick tips to think about as you are getting ready for your day-to-day teaching or the observations that you do to make sure that you have that successful learning environment that is filled with respect and engagement.